BizBash Live Los Angeles returns Wednesday, July 18th to the California Market Center. Have you secured your spot? Register now at bizbash.com/ExpoLA with code GATHER for special rates.
Are you a follower? Okay, so we're gonna do the ad.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Cormanick.
Welcome to GatherGeeks. My name is David Adler. I will be doing the hosting honors alone today since my co-host is on assignment, Beth Cormanick. In this episode, we're going to be sitting down with Maarten Vanneste, the president of the Meeting Design Institute in Belgium and the founder of the Fresh Conference. Vanneste will trace his history in the industry and how he became interested in the world of meetings. He also discusses the most effective ways to get meeting attendees to interact and what innovations have worked and what has not worked in the industry, especially at the Fresh Conference. He talks about how the industry has changed dramatically and how what he has done, what he is doing is becoming more important than ever. And I think from this interview, you will agree with me when you hear his background and a European slant on the face-to-face gathering world. So let's go with our interview. How did you become this guru in meeting design? Tell us a little bit about your story first. Like, what was your path?
So I started when I was 18. I started my own company, and I started in video production, but very quickly moved into like a broader audiovisual service and ended up doing meetings. A client that is close by here is a pharmaceutical company, and they invited us to support a meeting, and I immediately felt that this was something I'd love to do. And they asked us to work in PowerPoint, and they asked us, "Do you have PowerPoint?" And I said yes. And as soon as I left the meeting, I went to the store and bought PowerPoint 1.0 or something. So that was very, very early on, and very quickly I discovered the magic of meetings, slowly but surely we moved into that space with production and with different things. And I always kept asking, why are clients actually doing this? Why are they asking us to support them with their meetings? And that was kind of the driver behind, coming up with this solution to a frustration, actually, because when you look at the meetings industry, obviously there's the foundation of meetings are the hospitality. So you start, especially with international meetings, with the travel accommodation, the meeting space, the destination. All these things are fundamental to meetings. It's the first thing that you have to fix the dates in a place. That's what you do to start an international meeting, and then everything else follows. Booking speakers is based on that. Are they available for those dates, etc.? So it's really fundamental, but it's only the foundation as well. I could say, it's not the meeting itself. It's where we hold the meeting is essential, but it's not why we do it. So the answers that I got when I asked meeting planners, why do you organize meetings, was very rarely about putting people in beds in different cities than where they live, or feeding people in a different place than they usually eat. So that's not a purpose of a meeting. And slowly but surely it developed. And in 1999, when I went to IBTM for the first time in Geneva, I saw the hospitality side of the industry, and I really wondered, being from more like the inside of the meeting, the presentations and the staging and all that stuff, and the technology. Slowly but surely, I felt kind of a stranger, and that's how it started. That's how I started to really think about what is it that we do, and it took me like 10 years to think about this before I started writing the book Meeting Architecture, which is kind of the big cornerstone for anything that follows after that.
Go back 1 second. You said, the first thing you said was you discovered the magic of what a meeting is about. What is the magic of what a meeting is about in your that 18-year-old mind?
Yeah, I was 18, and here in my town, it's a small town. We had like 8 schools. All schools organized their last 100 days party. So it's like an event. It's got a name based on I don't know what, but it's a cultural thing, and they celebrate the last 100 days. And so every school did it on their own. And I was the chair of the school council, as a student council.
This is high school, right? High school.
Yeah. I was 18, not so still in high school, and so I invited all these other school chairs of the student council, and we had a meeting in a cultural center here where they gave us meeting space, etc. And we organized a stage for punk bands on the market square. This is 1982, so punk was still very hot, and so there was some kids playing some music, and then we did we did a walk through the town, and in the evening there was a party of 2,000 people, and that's what I always have felt is magic, bringing people together, and then you make things happen. It's like what MPI says: when we meet, we change the world. In a way, it's always a little bit of that. So I think when people meet, we actually do change things. It's only when we don't meet and we talk about each other that things go wrong in politics and in global economy, etc. But in a smaller way, it's when we meet, we get to know each other, we start projects, we meet friends, future business partners. All this stuff happens at meetings. So I think meetings are really a very seriously underestimated driver of economy.
Oh, I totally agree. I call it managed serendipity is what we basically do.
Yeah.
And you just make sure that we're in the right place at the right time, and you never know what's going to happen. Go back to the high school thing again. I mean, you're about I've done 100 of these podcasts, and about 50 or 60% of the people have high school stories about how they got into the industry. And it's interesting that is like where you actually build your repertoire almost. Do you see that as sort of like when you see other people, is that 100-day party is very interesting. Has that had a big impact in the community where you grew up? Just in terms of how people view what an event is?
I think this was the first time that all these schools did it together. In the past, they just had their parties with 1 or 2 schools maybe together, and this was the first time that we did all the schools did it together, and it was student based. It was just a grassroots thing, and I since then there's always been a bigger event happening at those dates. So. Yeah, I think people remember, people that were there, they remember this moment where this little city had the biggest party they've had ever seen, right. And maybe have never seen since. But I think it's a thing of it's kind of a magical thing where you bring people together, and this is just a party, but still, it shows that things are possible. And I always love to bring people together. I think that's it. It's not about organizing a party or a meal or anything else. It's about bringing people together. I think that is just such a magical thing, and it's just the way society and people grow.
Let's go a little bit into this meeting architecture. I mean, it sounds like some of the things that were the hallmark of what your book is about is what you sort of learned about the magic of events. And I mean, you build that into your meeting architecture, these moments?
Absolutely. I think what I did is ask people why they organized meetings, and meeting planners, which were in the room, always said similar things. And I've grouped those together as a learning, networking, and motivation. So having fun is a big deal. I think when you look at what's happening around C2 at the moment, for example, in the industry. They were present at IMEX, and C2 is the festival version, I think, of meetings. And I think that might be the next thing that is happening. So that's a lot about fun and about enjoying yourself and having a good time and making making pleasure, and enjoying what is happening. I think that's quite important for any meeting.
Right.
But the second thing is learning, and the third thing is networking, and those two are so powerful that I think there is almost nothing that comes close to meetings to make all these things happen. Networking is such an underestimated and such an important factor of meetings. And
yes, it's important. But remember when networking was a bad word? Like, I'm going to network. And now it's kind of like, it sounded like the word gossip was a bad word, but now it's like, oh, it's gossip. Well, it's people are gossiping all over the place. But networking, you have to give as much as you get to be effective. So it's not about the organizer only, it's about how the person reacts.
Yeah. I think it's like nuclear energy. I mean, if you have nuclear energy and you make electricity with it, and you can make your country energy sustainable or energy independent, that's a big deal. But if you start making, nuclear bombs and you start using them and threatening people with it, it's the same thing, but it's a different approach. And with networking, it's the same. If you're the mafia, then you have a network of mafia people. And but if you're a medical doctor or a specialist surgeon, then you have a network of other specialist surgeons, and you learn from them.
I totally agree with that.
It's good and bad, but I think without it, we are nothing.
Absolutely.
If Einstein would have sat alone in a basement, never presenting any of his work and getting any feedback from people like Marie Curie or others in his time, he wouldn't have gotten probably where he got. Just sitting in a basement talking to nobody doesn't challenge you, doesn't make you move forward. So you learn from each other. You make friends. You talk to each other. You call for help. Sometimes you need support. There's lots of things that are happening when you network. And I think in the future, the meeting industry or meeting professionals and meeting designers will see that within the sessions themselves, the so-called educational sessions, you can bring the best possible networking to the participants. Yeah. Because when people come to a session, they come to a session because they have selected the session based on the title, based on the speaker. So that's kind of an interesting filter that brings people together that have a similar interest. And
totally.
That is quite powerful.
Totally.
And if we can introduce those people to each other and make them spend enough time together in doing some exercises, discussing some topics, and giving feedback and learning from each other, some pair sharing, some 2-3 consultant techniques and those things, then we create real deep value, because they will also learn from each other, and they'll learn more than what they've just seen from the speaker. It's on top of what they learn from the speaker. They learn things from each other, but the fact that they are learning from each other and talking to each other, even if it's only 5 minutes, it's a very quick way of getting to know somebody.
Go into a little bit of what is the most unique approach that you have just invented in the idea of being, I call them a collaboration artist. What are some of the techniques that really work?
Well, you need to give people 3 things. It's time, it's a topic, and it's a task. And if you dare to do that, everything else happens by itself. You just then need to stop them. You need to time them. That's the 4th key, if you like. So the topic is there because you have a speaker. You give them time. I say, let's say 3 minutes, and you give them a task, discuss this topic and come up with a solution or something, or with a question for the speaker. People talk to each other for 3 minutes. or you could, and then you have to stop them. The stopping is sometimes even more difficult than anything else. But that's just very simple. It's nothing. It's absolutely not rocket science. It's super stupid and simple. It's put people at a round table, give them time, give them a topic, and give them a task, and let them speak to each other. That's just the only thing we need to do. Anything else is a variation on that. Are people talking in groups of 6, or are they pair sharing it in groups of 2? Those are all variations on the same thing. But that's, I think, it's not an invention. It's not technology. It's just very, very simple. But it seems to be very difficult, because the first time I heard this was in 1984, when I was at one of my very, very first conferences that I've ever supported, was in Antwerp. And the organizer of the conference came to me, I was walking around with him, and he said, "We need to do something about this. These presentations are so boring. People are falling asleep." So engagement and interaction was an issue in the early 1980s, and it still is today. I think there is obviously some examples in some cases that are doing a great job, but many of the conferences today are still very similar to the 80s, and it's very easy to change, but it's not, because why does it take so long? There's something happening that it doesn't seem to be so easy.
Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.
Are you seeing time limits and things like that on sessions now? Or is there a current vogue approach to learning in terms of how much time a person can be in one session?
Yeah, length of sessions, I think, or length of education or length of presentation is one thing. But I think we have maybe I think we came up with a too simple solution. The solution is not let's make shorter presentations. I mean, you could do Pecha, for example, 6 minutes, 40 seconds. And then if you have 2 hours and you make 10 of those presentations, including a coffee break, then you still have too much education. So I don't think sessions need to be shorter. I think sometimes sessions should be longer. We need to go deeper into some topics sometimes. But you need more variation within a session. It can be one speaker or it can be 3 speakers, but even if it's only one speaker, the speaker does 20 minutes of speaking and then you have 10 minutes of interaction. Or the speaker does, and then the speaker again, the same speaker could do 20 minutes of presentation and then followed by 10 minutes of interaction. That variation keeps people on their toes. It wakes them up every time for some good discussion with their colleagues. And that is, the energy levels go down after a while of speaking. So 20 minutes may be already too much, but bringing that variation within a session is much more important than just making sessions shorter, because it's just it could be even worse, having 10 short sessions of different speakers, filling it all up with presentation and no interaction. We need that variation.
So that's kind of one of your architectural rules, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I think the variation, you have to look at it like waves, waves of energy. Energy goes down when you listen to a speaker. Well, some speakers are good and can cope with that and make it different. But most speakers are professionals in something else than speaking.
Right.
So they don't know how to do this. They're nervous already. They're like totally afraid of this session because they're in front of their peers and they might make a fool of themselves. And that's terrible. It's a nightmare. Then they don't sleep well the night before, and so why would we ask them to do the interaction? It's not fair, I think, to speakers to depend on them. I think we, the industry, we, the planners, we, the meeting designers, we should be responsible for interaction, and we should relieve our speakers from the burden of adding that to their already difficult task.
So what does that look like in a session? Then you're talking about having an additional staff person that is trained to facilitate what a speaker content is all about.
Yeah, that's going to be the bottleneck or the Achilles heel of this idea, I guess. Can we find a way of making facilitation standardized and cheap enough so that it becomes something automatic? Maybe we need robot facilitators, so that it becomes simple, standardizable, that's the word, and cheap. But yes, that's absolutely what I'm talking about. I think one thing we experimented with the last Fresh conference, which is all about meeting design, and this one was all about interaction, is the pitbull session. So you cut the session in two, like you give the speaker half an hour and then you have half an hour of interaction. And that's the pitbull doing that. We're biting into the interaction, but not letting it go until it happens. Because that's, I think, where we are. We're trying to make interaction happen, but it's never an automatic thing. It's never something that happens by itself. It's never something that all associations are asking for or all associations are budgeting for. So we need to make this simple and affordable. That's going to be, whoever finds the way to do that.
Well, what are you doing at this Fresh conference? What kind of innovations have worked, and what has bombed? We learn more from our mistakes.
One of the things we do at the Fresh conference now this year for the second time is doing it Multihop, and that's quite crazy. I mean, we just cut this conference into 4 pieces, and we say you can go to London, you can go to Johannesburg in South Africa, you can go to Basel in Switzerland, or you can go to Copenhagen in Denmark. So we had four hubs. So we had groups in 4 cities, in 4 countries, and that's a big deal. And I think one of the things I have seen now is that a facilitator that was there for the second time really was comfortable and really was interrupting speakers all the time from Copenhagen, even though the speaker would be in South Africa. He was really interactive, really engaging from his hub. And it's quite frightening when this is the first time. You're skeptical, you're afraid, you think the technology is not going to work. But it seems to go really well. We've done it for the second time now with Fresh. And becomes more and more affordable and more reliable. And what we've done this year with Fresh, was what we call spider hubs. And it's a bit crazy because what you do is you set up 3 breakout rooms in the same meeting room. Each breakout room goes in a different video call, has their own camera, loudspeaker, and everything. And so you can walk from where you sit to table breakout A, which is a table, or 2 tables, and you can sit around or stand around that table and be in that call with a speaker in Johannesburg. Or you can walk to table B and be there with a speaker that speaks from London. Or you can walk to table C if you don't like what you see at table B. So it's and you will be in a video call with 4 little groups in total, 3 in these other cities as well as your own city. So that was quite a crazy thing to do. But it worked. We just did it, and it's something that is now more than 5 or 10 years ago. It's possible and affordable to do.
No, you said one thing. You said that one of the people sits in one country and interrupts someone in another country. Like when I do this podcast, I like to jump in and interrupt and change your. Is that something that you recommend?
I think so. Yeah, I think people sometimes that's one of the things that meeting planners are worried about. How is this going to work? But it works just like another meeting. If you have 100 people in a room and somebody's speaking, somebody's interrupting him or asking the microphone or standing up and shouting something, or if you have a panel, and one panelist interrupts the other. These things happen in real meetings, in face-to-face meetings, in single hub meetings, as I would call them today, as much as they would happen in multi-hub meetings.
Right.
So I think it's good. I mean, even if we would disagree, if you and I would disagree on something.
Yeah, it's great.
And we would have a discussion and a debate about this. People love that. People love a little bit of controversy.
It's also all about the neuroscience of this stuff. It wakes your brain up even more. And that's why I like the idea of not being so scripted.
True.
There's nothing worse than a totally scripted event.
It's a good thing, and I was really happy to see it happen in a Multihop meeting as well.
So when is the Fresh Conference coming up? Tell us a little bit about that.
Early next year, and the theme is improving presentation.
Nice.
We have a hub in Brazil, and we're looking at Portugal for our main hub this year. And we're always trying to do new things. So it might be that we have two big hubs, one in Brazil, one in Portugal. So we're heavily dominated by the Portuguese language. I don't think so. It's going to be in English, of course, but so those two could be the big hubs. Maybe we have another one somewhere in Europe or America. Who knows?
Yeah,
we would do.
Sounds great.
New York could work, but it could work for a couple of hours. You could do like a segment together, 2 or 3 hours, and then you could do your local speakers for the rest of the day, for example. Or it's like I'm working on a meeting for a client, actually, a medical, and they have a main hub in Munich, and they have a main hub in Taiwan, and the rest are all smaller, 5 to 10 people hubs, and everybody gathers in hospitals, and so it's going to be a meeting with 20 locations with a number of speakers, and the big hubs have 1 day, full day program, and the small hubs just join for 2 hours. So, all these things are possible.
Do you know what you said, that the purpose of it is to improve presentations? What do you see is the big failing in presentations now that you need to have a conference to discuss it? What do you see? Well,
there's a lot of things, of course, in presentations. When first of all, you have the slides, that's something that we still need to work on, and we need to find ways that are simple and easy for speakers to learn how to do this. And there are speakers themselves, of course, and then there is the help that we can give them to script it and help them with a facilitator so that the presentation actually becomes more engaging and dynamic. So it's a multitude of things. I don't think there is one single thing that is the big improvement of presentations. I think it's a multitude of things, and the magic would be to find like a standardized formula that is simple and cheap, so we can afford it for every speaker. If we can do something at $50 per speaker, and even if you have a conference of 100 speakers, that's only going to be €5,000 or $5,000. So it's, for a big event, it's like, that's nothing,
Right.
So we need to find something that is affordable, standardized, and proven effective. And it's improvement. You can't make it perfect. Don't try to be perfect. Like TED, for example, they have a perfect formula maybe for their conference, for their event. You could even give it to conference, for TED. But it's not about being perfect. It's about improving. It's about making steps forward. And if you could do something for $50 or maybe $75 or maybe the big package of $125 for more important speakers in bigger rooms, that would be something else. I mean, it should be automated, and it should be, limited in time consuming for speakers. That would be great. And I think we're nowhere near such a, general improvement of presentations. Again, speakers are professional in something else than speaking.
Right.
And there's only so much we can do.
I wanted to check one theory as we end here on what I'm seeing. What I sort of see that's going on is that convening power is the new marketing, in a sense. When you see 180,000 people going to Dreamforce in San Francisco for Salesforce, and you see 10,000 people going to a Goldman Sachs conference, or what I hear that the AWS, Amazon Web Services, is going to have 200,000 people attending it in Las Vegas in a few years, like CES, that convening power is more important than ever. Are you seeing that same trend in Europe?
I think so too. Yeah, I think we have some conferences that are really growing, like the one on mobile phones in Barcelona is huge. You have this web conference. There's several of them that are really becoming important and bigger. I mean, and very influential. It's influential in not just in the meeting industry, but in general, in general business and economy, so to speak, they become a real a powerhouse of influence.
Right.
So yes, I think the same thing is happening. I'm not sure if what is happening is the festivalizing, or how would you call it? Festivalitis, the trend of making a conference more look like a festival. I think we need a little bit of that. We need a little bit of fun and party and artistic things in conferences to make them more creative and pleasant to attend. It doesn't need to always be the great food and great wine. It can also be a funny thing that happens with an artist and music.
Oh yeah, no, the experiential part of this. I mean, I'm going to C2 this weekend actually. I'm totally looking forward. We name it as one of the top conferences in the U.S. in North America, and we've been big supporters of theirs for a long time. And I think that is what's coming. It's sort of where commerce, what you talk about, when you can match commerce, training and education and entertainment is like the magic triangle for all this stuff. And it seems to be really taking off, especially we're in this pop-up world, and it looks like trade shows and conferences are the ultimate pop-up, and it's becoming where the new town squares really are. And that's what I find encouraging. That's why I think that meeting design and event design and social physics of events and things like that are more important than ever now, because it's a missed opportunity if you don't do it right.
Yeah, I think we would use different words and techniques maybe for doing the same thing, but what I think is also a driver for that type of events is the younger generation.
Absolutely.
I grew up with books and newspapers, and as I grew up, TV was getting color, and
yep.
The number of channels went up, etc. And we got more. At first there was only what is it called? Not Star Wars, but and Dallas. With that.
Right. You have Dallas. Of course, you have Dallas.
My kids, 16 and 18, they are not on TV, not at all. They have their little world, or their little screen, I should say.
Yes.
It's a big world, and they learn so much from YouTube. And I think that is going to cause, maybe some of the festivalization and the pop-up style, as you say, of events.
Absolutely.
On the other side, I think I also believe that the importance of networking will grow, because people learn so much from YouTube. The learning becomes less important at conferences, I think, and therefore the networking will definitely be much more important.
My friend Scott Heffernan says that it's no longer content is king; it's contact is king. And
contact is king.
Contact.
That's a good one.
Isn't that a good one?
That is really good.
The other thing I stole from him was he says that the most powerful word in the English language is the word let's. Because whenever two people get together, they say, let's go to lunch, let's go to dinner, let's hook up, let's start a revolution. And that's what happens when people get together. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So
and that's I think fundamental to meeting design is what should people say after they meet, after they have the meeting, after they go home go home from the conference. Let's start a project.
Yes.
Let's stay in touch. Let's set up a call about this. Let's do something.
Yep.
The action phase after the conference is obviously very important, and we should all design a conference based on knowing what those actions are that people should do after the conference.
Absolutely.
When they say, let's do this.
Yeah. So you can steal it. Yeah, I stole it from him. So
very good.
Maarten, how do we get in touch with you, and tell us, let our people that are listening know how they can reach you? I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to connect to me. And also, when you
Book Fresh conference, you might also find some connections. So yeah, that's, I guess.
Great. And we'll have liner notes and all that on all the stuff to get in touch with as well. So I really appreciate this conversation. Let's get together soon and look forward to maybe participating in Fresh at some point.
Super.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's meet in Vegas.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Maarten.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So thank you for listening to my interview with Maarten. I have found this interview very invigorating and really sort of appreciating how the European world is taking events and meetings even more seriously than we are in many cases. As the world gets smaller and smaller, I think you're going to see more innovation that will permeate all aspects of the industry. For more information, please tune into GatherGeeks.com and BizBash.com, and you can get more information on the topic. And be sure to look at the meeting notes, the podcast notes, to get some of the sources that Maarten has talked about here in today's podcast. So thank you again, and as we say at the end of every podcast, gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. Don't forget to register for BizBash Live Los Angeles on July 18th at the California Market Center. Join nearly 1,500 fellow event pros at the must-attend event of the year. Secure your spot today at bizbash.com/ExpoLA with code GATHER for special rates.